Hello everyone, Dr. Polaris here. Well, it's time for some more weird sauropods, as today we'll be examining the last major group of Diplodocoids, the Rebbachisaurids. These animals are often classified as being the most basal members of Diplodocoidea, given that they lack some of the key traits present in Diplodocids and Dicraeosaurids, including the bifurcated cervical neural spines on the neck and back. They also possess distinctive teeth, which were curved, elongated and chisel-shaped, with asymmetrical enamel, and have low-angled internal wear facets. Like other Diplodocoids, these were replaced at a higher rate than was typical for sauropods, with some genera such as the bizarre Nigersaurus developing complex tooth batteries superficially similar to those of hadrosaurs and ceratopsians. This was a highly unusual feature among sauropods, representing a fairly extreme adaptation for a low-browsing diet. Native to South America, Africa, Europe and possibly North America, Rebbachisaurids were generally quite modest in size, again by sauropod standards, with most forms being roughly elephant-sized animals. Given their more basal position within Diplodocoidea, they probably diverged at least 166 million years ago during the Middle Jurassic, although the oldest known definitive Rebbachisaurids hail from the early Cretaceous circa 130 million years ago. However, some older finds have been attributed to the group, such as the infamous now-lost holotype of Marapunisaurus, formerly known as Amphicelius fragilimus, and based on a single enormous yet poorly preserved vertebra recovered from the outcroppings of the Morrison Formation in the Garden Park area north of Canyon City, Colorado. The remains were officially examined by just one person, the notorious Edward Drinker Cope in 1878. Through his surviving notes and sketches, it's been ascertained that the preserved parts of the vertebra stood approximately 1.5 metres or 4.9 feet tall, while its original height may have reached a whopping 2.7 metres or 8.9 feet. If these estimates are broadly accurate, then this animal possessed the most massive vertebrae of any animal living or extinct. Sadly, the quality of the specimen was so poor that it probably crumbled to dust not long after Cope examined it, meaning that we are unable to verify its exact size and dimensions. Although originally thought to have belonged to a massive diplodocid that may have reached almost 60 metres or roughly 200 feet long, it's been more recently suggested that the mystery vertebra more likely belonged to a gargantuan rebbachisaurid instead. If so, paleontologist Kenneth Carpenter suggested that this sauropod, which was removed from the genus Amphicelius and placed in the novel Marapunisaurus, may have measured between 35 and 40 metres, or up to 131 feet long, and weighed anywhere from 70 to 120 metric tons. If true, this would make the genus one of the largest sauropods to have ever lived. This level of gigantism would be unprecedented within Rebbachisaurids, which were otherwise relatively modest in size. All other members of this group are also native to the Cretaceous period, with basal forms including Amazonsaurus from circa 125 to 100 million years ago, an approximately 12 metre or 40 foot long animal that was the first dinosaur to be uncovered from the Amazonian basin region of Brazil. Another potential basal form, Histriosaurus, may have been the oldest Rebbachisaurid known from surviving evidence. Native to what is now Croatia between 135 and 125 million years ago, it's known from pretty scrappy remains, but was probably a low-browsing herbivore. Like other members of the group, it probably possessed a comparatively short, thick neck, while lacking the whip-like tail of Diplodocids and Dicraeosaurids. Rebbachisaurids truly thrived during the Cenomanian and Turonian stages of mid-Cretaceous South America, which is where these animals reached the peak of their diversity. Several genera were endemic to the Huincul Formation of Argentina, living alongside the enormous titanosaur Argentinosaurus, as well as the formidable predatory Carcharodontosaurs Mapusaurus and Meraxes. These included the recently described genus Astigmasaura, which may have reached 18 metres or 59 feet long, and weighed in at over 10 metric tons. Although the other Rebbachisaurids with which it shared this environment were generally more derived animals, it seems to have been a close relative of the contemporary Pseudosaura, which may have been among the largest members of the family. Known from the remains of 4 individuals, this non-selective low-browsing herbivore probably reached up to 20 metres or 66 feet long, and weighed in the region of 15 tons. Other earlier South American forms include the thankfully well-preserved Lavocatisaurus, from the Aptian to Albian stages of Argentina, Also known from multiple juvenile and adult specimens, this animal possessed a relatively narrow skull similar to that of Diplodocus, which terminated in a square-tipped snout that may have been covered by a beak-like keratinous sheath useful for cropping low-growing vegetation. All more derived Rebbachisaurids were members of the clade Cebacea, which can be divided into two major subfamilies, with these being Limesaurinae and Rebbachisaurinae. We'll start with the former group, which were endemic to South America and are best represented by the type genus Limesaurus. Native to Argentina and spanning the Candeleros and Huincul formations between 99 and 94 million years ago, this animal is known from several specimens, with the holotype being roughly 80% complete, making Limesaurus among the best preserved of Cretaceous South American sauropods. It was a relatively large member of the family at 15 metres or 49 feet long and weighed approximately 7 metric tons. The neural spines of its vertebrae were very tall and shaped like a capital letter I, while lacking the bifurcated structure seen in Diplodocids and Dicraeosaurids. It lived alongside very formidable large theropods such as Giganotosaurus, which would have very likely targeted even adult individuals of Limesaurus, especially if sick or injured. The genus had several close relatives, all of which are known from substantially poorer remains, including Catapensaurus from the Chubut province of Argentina, which did at least preserve highly pneumatized bones, which was a trait typical of Rebbachisaurids, but quite unlike the Dicraeosaurids that we covered in the previous episode. These South American endemics were among the youngest members of the family, which contrasts with their sister group, the Rebbachisaurians, which have a longer history in the fossil record. The subfamily also possessed a wider range, with representatives dwelling in what is now South America, Africa and Europe. Interestingly, one of the earliest Rebbachisaurians was native to the Lower Cretaceous of Spain, demonstrating a faunal interchange that would last right up until the end of the period. This was Demandasaurus, the holotype of which was found in the late Barremian to early Aptian Castrillo de la Reina formation circa 125 million years ago. Unusually for a Diplodocoid sauropod, and especially in comparison with its very square-mouthed relative Nigersaurus, the front of the mouth was rather rounded, which perhaps indicates a more selective browsing niche for this animal. Speaking of which, by far the most famous of all Rebbachisaurids was the bizarre genus Nigersaurus, which, unsurprisingly, was native to what is now the West African nation of Niger, endemic to the Aptian to Albian-aged El Haz formation between 115 and 105 million years ago. Nigersaurus is represented by a relatively complete holotype that importantly includes a partial skull, and what a skull it was! Being lightly built with thin bones and large fenestrae, it possessed a very wide square-shaped muzzle that resembled a vacuum cleaner or lawnmower, complete with more than 500 teeth that were arranged in batteries at the front of the jaws. In fact, Nigersaurus is currently the only known tetrapod to have all of its teeth located at the very front of the mouth, as well as being the only tetrapod to possess jaws that were wider than the rest of the skull. These dental batteries were fully replaced every 14 days, which is remarkably rapid even when compared to the high tooth replacement rates of other Diplodocoids, which indicates that Nigersaurus was a highly specialised low browser, utilising its wide mouth like a lawnmower to crop soft vegetation such as ferns, horsetails and angiosperms. Its bite force was weak when compared to other sauropods, with the odd structure of its jaws meaning that this animal was unable to chew its food. Given these traits, it's sometimes been argued that Nigersaurus would have held its head in a habitually downward-facing position, although this has yet to be proven convincingly. Aside from its bizarre skull, the postcranial remains were far more typical for a Rebbachisaurid, with the animal being about the size of an Asian elephant. It dwelt in a hot tropical environment comprised of lush river deltas, with Nigersaurus being one of the most common large herbivores in its ecosystem, demonstrating that this sauropod's weird adaptations served it well. It's currently unknown whether other members of the subfamily possessed similar skull shapes and tooth batteries, although most of them, including the type genus Rebbachisaurus itself, were certainly low-browsing herbivores. This animal is currently the only named sauropod that was native to the famous Kem beds of Cenomanian Morocco between 100 and 95 million years ago, living alongside iconic dinosaurs such as Spinosaurus and Carcharodontosaurus. Rebbachisaurus is known from quite scrappy material, but probably reached lengths of 14 metres or 46 feet. Rebbachisaurids thrived during the mid-Cretaceous, being the last of the Diplodocoids, outlasting the similarly weird Dicraeosaurids in the niche of modestly-sized low-browsing sauropods. They lived alongside the often far larger titanosaurs, which occupied higher browsing niches. However, Rebbachisaurids vanished from the fossil record by around 90 million years ago, quite possibly as a result of the Cenomanian-Turonian extinction event, although exactly how this contributed to their decline is unclear. After the demise of these sauropods, the modestly sized Saltosaurid titanosaurs appear to have filled a similar ecological role, although were nowhere near as specialised and downright bizarre as some of the Rebbachisaurids were. Thanks for watching, everyone. The next episode will be a Patreon request, focusing on the endemic mammalian fauna of modern Madagascar, as I've already covered the lemurs and eupleurid carnivorans. This time we'll be looking at the unique Malagasy rodents and tenrecs. So until then, I'll see you again soon. Cheerio.